Hello and welcome everyone to today's episode of Voices of eLearning. I'm your host JW Marshall with MarketScale, and we're so glad that you found us today. On this episode, we have not one but two guests that I think our audience is going to be really excited about learning from today. First, we have Mylayna Albright. She is the Assistant Vice President, Corporate Social Responsibility with AT&T. Here in studio, live. This is kind of a big deal. Post-pandemic, hopefully, having more live guests on the show. And then also virtually, we have Sal Khan, founder of Khan Academy. Sal, how are you doing today?
Doing great. Great to be here.
Excellent. And Mylayna, how are you doing today?
Doing great.
Excellent. And AT&T is based right here in Dallas, Texas with MarketScale. Did you make the walkover or did you make the drive?
I made the drive today. I wanted to walk. It's about 97 degrees. It feels about 107. So in the effort to not melt on my way here, I decided to drive.
Perfect. My audience has come to know this first question as one of my favorites. To get the ice broken here, I like to start out by asking, and I'll start with Sal. Instead of who are you and what do you do, for anyone that doesn't know, who are you and why do you love what you do?
Oh, good question. No, I'm the founder and CEO of the not-for-profit Khan Academy, which has a mission of free world-class education for anyone, anywhere. And why I love what I'm doing, when you look at almost any issue in the world and you really try to peel the onion on it, it really does boil down to what's happening in people's minds. And the best way, I believe, to improve what's happening in people's minds is through education, and to improve their potential and improve their purpose and their ability to contribute to the world. And so to be able to wake up every morning and to work on this mission with incredible team members, partners, supporters around the world, hear from learners and parents and teachers around the world of how it's helping them. I don't think there's a better job out there.
I love it. And Mylayna, you had a little bit of time to prep, so same question for you.
No, thank you. So Mylayna Albright, of course, you mentioned I'm AVP of Corporate Social Responsibility, but the reason why I love what I do, when I look into the faces of the young people that we help on a daily basis, underrepresented, underserved students, that was my background. That's where I come from. So to be able to bring that perspective and that experience to the work I do and help our work at AT&T be more impactful, I think that's why I actually love what I do, to see that there's impact that we can make and know that there are young men, young women out there who are just like me, who I can, give that nudge to help them along.
I love that. And so much impact has been made in the last year and a half with the pandemic and hopefully a lot of silver linings that we'll get to. But before we get there, talk to us a little bit about how AT&T got into digital learning.
Oh gosh. So last year, as with the rest of the world, we knew that there was this pandemic looming. At that point, I'd say back in maybe January, February, we still had no idea of how massive it would be. But at that time, we knew we had to get prepared in order to work with the students that we were already serving. So we decided that we needed to pivot very quickly to distance learning. So through partners like Khan Academy, I think Khan was actually the very first program that we funded with $1 million in order to bring forward resources to help students, parents, and teachers with the resources they needed to help them pivot to that digital distance learning platform. As we kind of made it through the year, it became obvious that it was going to be a much longer term play for us. But essentially, of the program that we started with Khan Academy, we developed a $10 million distance learning family connections fund. And from that, we just pivoted and grew exponentially to now really working to serve students who are impacted by digital divide, specifically the homework gap.
Absolutely. And we want to dive into that digital divide and what's being done there. But first, Sal, talk to us a little bit about what it's meant to have this partnership with AT&T. When did it start? And how has it allowed you to keep doing what you're doing?
Yeah, it's been a huge deal. We've had a very strong partnership and relationship with AT&T for many years now. But then a little over a year ago, when the pandemic hit, it was one of those moments where, all of us at Khan Academy kind of look left and look right. And I think this is us, because folks were going to need something that's accessible from home, but also works well with the classroom environment, has teacher tools, covers multiple subjects and grades. And so when we started seeing those physical school closures back in March of 2020, we saw our traffic triple. We saw in a normal school day, we have about 30 million learning minutes per day. We saw that go to about 80, 85, 90 million learning minutes. And we were doing whatever we could to just keep up with the demand, try to accelerate other content, try to put more supports out there for parents and students and teachers, because everyone really didn't know how to navigate this new type of learning. But while that was happening, you can imagine, as a not-for-profit that is primarily philanthropically funded, we needed partners to really step up and help us in this. You can imagine what happens with our server costs and a whole range of other things, not just partners that directly support us, but also partners that can lay the groundwork so that people can leverage something like Khan Academy. And so that's where AT&T really accelerated the partnership that we were already having. They stepped up literally, if I remember correctly, in a matter of days or weeks. Thanks, Mylayna, for really being there, because it really is that quickness of responding that makes all the difference in the world. And it actually sent a huge signal to other corporations that maybe they should be doing this as well. But that effort to really support our COVID-19 effort allowed us to race ahead and support tens of millions of families, primarily in the US, but actually around the world, in as full-throated of a way as possible. And now we've accelerated that partnership even more because of that fund that Mylayna had mentioned, so that we're going to be able to continue to support people. And I've been telling a lot of folks, as important as that COVID period has been, this post-COVID period might even be more important, because there's been so much. Well, some kids have been able to keep up, but a lot of kids, and these are oftentimes the kids that we most worry about even before the pandemic, they're going to have, what now everyone calls unfinished learning or learning gaps, but there needs to be some way to fill in those gaps. And we think digital learning, you need the internet connectivity, you need the devices, and then you need the Khan Academies on top of that to really help the students, the parents, and the teachers make sure that all these kids have strong foundations.
That's a great point to bring up, and we were going to wait on learning loss till later in the episode, but it's so critical and it's so important, and a lot of different research is coming out on how bad is it, but I think everyone can agree it's not good. And it's, like many things, accelerated or shown the light on learning loss that already existed pre-pandemic, and what can we do to address that. And so my hopefully half glass full, what I'm hearing on this show with a lot of experts is this is really going to be a difficult year. There's a lot of ground to make up, and not just making up ground, but really trying to think and reimagine education in a way that is going to accelerate learning from here on out. So we don't have a lost generation of students. We could potentially have these students that have suffered this terrible group trauma with all of us be the beneficiaries of a better way, of a better system moving forward. And it probably won't happen in a year or 2 years, but if we can get it right, if we can reimagine the future of education, we may be able to accelerate growth of retention rates and learning by 2, 3, 4x, and that will hopefully put us in a better spot. What is AT&T doing? What is Khan Academy doing to do things differently moving into this post-pandemic world that we're moving in, that is better than it was in 2019 pre-pandemic? Because as we all know, 2019 wasn't that great for a lot of student populations. Talk to us. That's a long way of saying, talk to us a little bit about connected learning, and some of the other things that you're doing to hopefully accelerate learning beyond what it was before the pandemic.
Yeah, so just kind of alluding to some of Sal's answer, I think it's important to note, so when we think about digital divide and homework gap, that is something that existed well before COVID and will exist well after. So, I've had people question, like, well, is this the right time? Have we missed the boat? And it's like, no, those same kids are still going to go home, and they're not going to have adequate access to a broadband connection to enhance their learning. So as a result of that, our CEO, John Stankey, really, put a flag in the sand to say, I want us to tackle the digital divide and help narrow that homework gap. So back in April, we announced a $2 billion 3-year commitment to make sure that we were able to provide equitable broadband for all. So as we think about the kind of 3 pillars of digital divide, you want to make sure that you have affordability, you want to make sure you have access, you want to make sure you have adoption. So that's how we've really laid the groundwork for our AT&T Connected Learning program. So with that, we hope that we can work with organizations like Khan, because in addition to that connectivity, you get them connected, but you have to take it that next step to give them something to really appreciate and enhance that learning. And that's where a Khan Academy comes in for that. So when you think about, the summer learning loss, that's the way that you're able to get it it to students, try to make it a way that's fun, that's enjoyable. It's not like they're sitting down and like, oh, they're dreading doing the work, but you do it in a way that's creative. And that's why I think the partnership with Khan has been so successful.
I love that. And similar question to you, Sal, what is different maybe pre-pandemic to post-pandemic for the direction of your content and curriculum? And maybe even a little added bonus question. A lot of experts, if you will, say, well, the students say they don't have the attention span that they used to and things like that. But if you get them in front of the right video game or Netflix show, they can consume media for a long time. So what is Khan Academy doing differently now than they may have been doing before the pandemic, if anything?
Yeah, I'll tackle that in reverse order.
Yep.
Sometimes us now, I'm in my 40s, so I could say, we judge young people. They don't have the attention span that we had. But, I don't think most of us really forget when we used to sometimes sit and have to pay attention to a lecture. We would sometimes zone out, not always be able to pay attention. So I think attention spans have been about the same for a very long time. We just pretended that we had longer attention spans earlier, and that's because we didn't have many alternatives. And it's interesting because people most associate Khan Academy with these short form videos that I started making for my cousins 10, 15 years ago. And now there's thousands of them, but most of our resources are on the exercise side and the video side. But those first videos were sub 10 minutes, really because of a time constraint from YouTube. But then education researchers, actually cognitive researchers, started sending me papers, said, how did you know this? You must be really up on the research, because we've documented actually for decades, well before the internet, well before social media, that human beings can actually only really focus for about 10 minutes. And then they zone out for about 4 or 5 minutes. Then they zone back in, unless they're asked to do some type of active learning. So I think what's different about today is students know that there are alternatives. If I were to just lecture at a student for 60 minutes, they're like, wait, I could get an on-demand version of this. I could watch it at double speed. I can pause, I can repeat. And so they might not be able to, might maybe be willing to tolerate a long form lecture the way that we might have when we were younger. In terms of what the pandemic has done or catalyzed, from the beginning, there's been 3 pillars to Khan Academy. The first is, can we make all of the core academic material from pre-K through the core of college available to everyone in the world? And implicit in that is, can we make learning not bound by time or space? The second pillar is, how do you meet students where they are? There's a very sad statistic, predates the pandemic. 70% of all kids who go to community college have to take remedial math. And remedial math is not 11th or 12th grade math, it's middle school math. So what's going on in our country already pre-pandemic, and the numbers aren't much better at the 4-year universities, is that even the students who graduate from high school, even the students who are doing doing everything right, the great majority of them, even though they take 8th grade math, algebra 1, algebra 2, geometry, pre-calc, some of them even take calculus, but because they had to be pushed ahead at a fixed pace, they got a 20% gap in one concept, then a 30% gap in another, then a 10% gap in the other one. When they get to college, the college is saying, wait, you haven't mastered any of this. You're not even ready to learn 9th grade math yet. You have to go back to middle school. So even before the pandemic, one of the big tenets of Khan Academy is, if we can meet students where they are, if we can do what's now known as mastery learning, it's a term coined by Benjamin Bloom almost over 30 years ago, which is this idea of, instead of holding fixed when you learn something and pretty much ensuring a variable outcome, A, B, C, D, F, do it the other way around. If a student is at a 80% level, let them keep working on it. So you have a fixed standard that everyone masters the concepts, and what's variable is how long and when they have to do it. And to do that realistically, you need to have some type of technology. Every teacher will tell you there's 30 kids in their room. They all have different needs, different gaps, but it's very hard to personalize without using a tool like Khan Academy. Now, what's been interesting is pre-pandemic, the US has actually done a good job in the classroom of closing the digital divide with things like the E-rate program. And I know the telecom industry has been a big player there. But what the pandemic did is it put a big spotlight on the at-home digital divide. And the at-home digital divide was an issue even pre-pandemic. We saw this in schools for the last 10 years, where even if there's one student in the classroom who didn't have sufficient internet access at home, the teacher really couldn't leverage or lean on a tool like Khan Academy in a formal way. They could say, yeah, use this if you can, but if one kid doesn't have access, they can't really assign homework on it. They can't say to work on it during a break or during summer. And then the pandemic hit. We all know that 20, 30, 40% of students really did not have sufficient either internet access or supports or device access at home. And what's been really powerful about what AT&T has been doing is closing that digital divide. And obviously there has been more energy, not just at the corporate level, at the national level, at the governmental level to do it, but that's going to unlock all sorts of things post-pandemic for people to leverage tools like Khan Academy in a much more full-throated way, so that we can ensure that kids don't keep getting promoted with these gaps, and then they get to community college and they really suffer. And there's another benefit of it. If learning is not bound by time or space, then and there will be, unfortunately, kids who kind of fall off the track because of the pandemic. But as long as there's always opportunities for them to re-engage, and that's where we think online can be really powerful.
Yeah, can I add on to that too?
Please.
So as we think about, the silver lining of it all, if you think back, like we've known that this has been an issue. Like students have not had adequate access. They're not able to get on the internet when they're at home. But look how quickly we were able to get that done, right? So when you think about programs like AT&T's low-cost broadband option access from AT&T, and Sal mentioned, the work that the government has done. So we have the emergency broadband benefit, or EBB. Those are all options that we can offer now that have so many more students connected than really, again, that we could ever. It would have taken us years, to really get there. So to be able to step back and say that, although we had this horrible pandemic going on the other side of it, we do have many, many more students, especially those who were most vulnerable, most at risk, who are connected now.
Absolutely. And Sal mentioned Bloom earlier, and that made me think of the new cliche in education: we have to Maslow before we bloom. We have to get internet connectivity, we have to get the digital divide taken care of, and we have to do social emotional learning before the best content in the world can really make an impact. And so I was going to have you go a little deeper into, you're right, we've cut some red tape and we've moved quicker than anyone ever thought possible. How do we not put the genie back in the box? How do we keep that? And I don't want to get too much into policy here, but how do we keep the gas, pedal down on getting to every single student? I know it has seemed like a theoretical, lofty goal for a number of years, if not a decade. We've made more progress than ever. How do we do that again next year without the pandemic kind of up against our back?
Yeah, I know from an AT&T perspective, there are programs that we have. That's why over the next 3 years, we plan to continue putting programs out. One that I'll mention in particular is a program that we've done with Connected Nation. So we are able to bring Wi-Fi devices with a free data plan to about 35,000 students across the country. And that Connected Nation has worked very hard they have selected all of the participants. But with that, that allows us to get more connectivity out. But again, you can't just have the connectivity. You have to have something that rides along with it to help make sure that, they're taking advantage of the educational side of it. So a couple of aspects of our AT&T Connected Learning program, one of them is a learning portal that we're doing with our Warner Media colleagues. So that's going to tie Warner Media IP to curriculum. Students will be able to go onto that platform and to actually, in a very fun way, tie, a course in it that may deal with, social studies, or science, and tie that to a clip from the Wonder Woman movie. So with that, we think that will help keep students' attention. In addition to that, we got to meet students where they are. Not every student is able to have, a home space that's, long-term. Many of them may be homeless or have other issues, and they may get their connectivity through a community center. So we've announced that we're going to fund about 20 AT&T Connected Learning Centers across the country, and these will be based in some of our most underserved neighborhoods so that students would still have access to connectivity, but also to that same portal that they can either, watch, we call it a watch and learn experience, or they can actually go in and visit Khan Academy. Khan is one of our partners with the education portal as well. But in addition to that, keep in mind, these are families that may have never had adequate access. So you get them on the internet. We need to teach them digital literacy so that they know how to get online, that they know how to be safe once their students are online working. So I think it's that entire platform that you put together and offer that. And that's how you keep them engaged. That's how you give them, something new and shiny that they feel like they're getting something from that connection.
And if I recall, at the learning centers, AT&T employees will also volunteer to mentor and coach and tutor.
No, absolutely. And that's, I think, one of the more fun parts of this is that it's not something that just kind of exists off on a side. Like, we really want to be engaged, and our employees want to be engaged with that. So it was very important that we tied in our employee engagement to that part of the work. So we're really excited and hoping that that's up and running a little bit later this year.
That's really exciting. And that's, I think we can all agree also, it's not just the connectivity, it's not just the curriculum, but I think we've all gained a new appreciation for the educators. As parents, we've all become educators to some degree, and a newfound respect for what they do. But I think it's really shown the light on how important the connection of an educator or a volunteer or a tutor is to a student's learning. And Sal, I know you've just launched a new business as well that kind of brings that connection to light. Can you talk to us a little bit about your new venture into tutoring?
Yeah, and first I'll just double down on the statement you just made. You know, I'm oftentimes viewed as something of a poster child for online learning, but I'll be the first to say that if I had to pick between an amazing in-person educator with no technology for myself, for my own children, or for anyone's children, versus the fanciest technology on the planet, I would pick the in-person educator with stick and sand any day of the week. Luckily, we don't have to make that trade-off. The ideal is both. Leverage technology where it actually makes the most sense. And even there, it shouldn't be technology for technology's sake. It should be technology to some pedagogical goal. How do we make learning not bound by time or space? How do we personalize to the needs of students so that they don't keep progressing without with gaps in their knowledge? And that's where the technology is really interesting. But to your point, you know, educators have known for a very long time that the human live interaction can be very, very powerful, especially if it can be done in one-on-one or in a small group setting, essentially tutoring. But the reason why we've never seen mainstream tutoring adoption is because it's expensive, it's resource intensive. And there's always been a little bit of a dream as part of the broader Khan Academy vision of what if we could leverage a community to teach each other. I think the pandemic, if anything, has made all of us appreciate each other as human beings more. Yes, there's certain things we can do on Zoom. Yes, there's certain things that we can do remotely, that we can do online. But now I think we're all going to appreciate when we are together, when we were live with each other, even if it's live over video conference. And so when the pandemic hit last year and Khan Academy's traffic had gone threefold, I started reaching out to some friends and saying, hey, couldn't we create an effort and as another not-for-profit to give people free tutoring? And the way to do that, the way to scale, is to leverage volunteership. The idea here is there's a lot of incredible high school students, college students who would love to tutor their peers or kids who are a little bit younger than them. There's a lot of professionals. Obviously, I got started on this journey, on this Khan Academy journey, by tutoring my cousins back when I used to be an analyst at an investment firm. So I suspected there's other people like that. There's actually even teachers at private schools who want to give back to kids who are more in need than maybe the students that they teach directly. They're retired professors, retirees in general. So we started this effort, schoolhouse.world, that matches students into small group tutoring sessions with high quality vetted volunteers. And by the end of last fall, it was working. And so we got some of our first philanthropic funding. A bunch of states started to say, hey, this is exactly what we need. Everyone's been talking about tutoring to stem some of the learning loss. So Rhode Island, Mississippi, Nevada, Colorado, Ohio, Alaska, North Dakota, I could keep adding. They've all joined forces with us. Arnie Duncan, former Secretary of Education, is on this effort as well. And we really view this as a complement to Khan Academy. You know, a lot of the work that we've been doing with AT&T is to prevent the learning loss, make sure we can accelerate all of this content that students are going to need, these get ready for grade level courses, these webinars for parents and teachers. And now if we can overlay on top of that, that you also can get live help, we think that's going to be pretty powerful. So there's a few thousand people on it now, but anyone listening, they can either volunteer to tutor, and there's a process where you can certify your knowledge and become a vetted tutor. And also anyone listening can either get tutoring or they can have their children on it. It's right now middle and high school math, SAT, and some of the high school sciences.
I think I've seen some research, and maybe out of University of Chicago, that showed that high dosage tutoring has really been working, especially as we think about learning loss. I mean, it used to be summer learning loss, right? Or that learning slide. But as we think about kind of how education changed, that high dosage tutoring is really, really helpful to make sure that students are able to either stay on track or get back on track.
Well, and so much of it isn't just about what they're going to learn in that high dosage tutoring, but it's getting them the passion again for learning, the confidence, so that they can then take that into the next thing and the next thing. And my hope is that we don't just look at passing certain standards moving forward, but we really look at the rate of learning. And if we can improve the rate of learning for students, that's going to make them a better lifelong learner. You mentioned summer, which is here already. I can't believe 2021 summer is here. Tell us a little bit more about the free summer, virtual summer camp opportunities that are coming up.
I'll jump in really quickly, and I'm going to pivot to Sal because Khan is doing a really great job that we are supporting for their summer camp. But it was important for us. So there was a morning consult study that they did on behalf of AT&T, and we learned that about 1/5 of parents and 1/4 of teachers indicated that they felt that there would be need for summer learning to make sure that students are able to stay on track, especially for students who suffer from homework gap and just didn't have the access that they needed. So overall, AT&T is contributing $3 million to Khan Academy as part of our Connected Learning initiative, and a piece of that will help to support their efforts this summer. The remaining contribution will go towards all of the content and work that they will do towards our education portal. But we were really excited, understanding that summer learning was so important. But I'll kick it to Sal to talk about like their summer camp program.
Yeah, and I want to emphasize we wouldn't be able to do any of this without AT&T support, and there couldn't be a more important time to have this type of support and partnership. So Mylayna, first of all, thank you for this. But yeah, there's several efforts that are part of this portfolio of things that we need to do. Right now it's summer, and this is a very important summer. So there's two efforts broadly called Camp Khan. One is the mainstream, or I guess you could say the big kid Camp Khan. That's for ages for 3rd grade through 8th grade. And it starts in July, and it's really to help students build a habit of learning through Khan Academy, where we recommend that they do 15 minutes a day. There's other activities that they can do. They can win prizes, extrinsic motivators, as they'll say in the education world, like AirPods or national park passes and things like that. But it's really to build that habit. And that habit isn't just to stem learning loss or to finish some unfinished learning. That habit of being able to spend 15, 20 minutes a day learning at your own time and pace is arguably one of the most important skills that any child could have, regardless of where they, what they're learning. We also have Camp Khan Kids. Once again, with support of AT&T, we have Khan Academy Kids, which is our early learning app, which is for ages 3 through 7. And it goes through all of the Head Start standards and the Common Core standards through 3rd grade. In not just math, reading, writing, math, social emotional learning. And so Camp Khan Kids does that with, especially at that age group, getting your motor skills, having paper-based projects. That's all included. And everything I'm talking about, it's all philanthropically funded. AT&T has been a major supporter here. It is all free. And I emphasize that because you'd be amazed, or maybe you're not amazed, how much stuff is out there that they're trying to sell to parents and this and that. There's more efficacy studies behind what AT&T and we are offering for free to every family in the country. For example, Khan Academy Kids, there's been a randomized controlled trial, kind of the gold standard in research studies, that students who were able to put in 20 minutes a day for 6 weeks we were able to close the gap between students in the bottom quartile and students who are at the 50th percentile. That was just 20 minutes a day for 6 weeks. So any parents listening out there, any schools listening out there, this is a really powerful way to get your kids caught up. And then it's all in this Camp Khan packaging, which I think makes it a little bit more fun and makes it a little bit more feel like a happening.
I love that. And that's getting back to the accelerated growth rate of learning. And it kind of dispels another misconception that everything has to be online all the time. We need to have the connectivity to have the best of online, but I often get asked, well, what's better, online learning or on-site learning? And I'm like, that's the wrong question. That's the totally wrong question. There's good online learning and there's not so good. There's good on-site learning, and there's been plenty of not so good online learning over the past century as well. And so I think people are settling into this hybrid model, and also realizing that some of the best online learning happens offline, right? They have some videos, they get some foundation, and then maybe it's an activity they print off and they're not on the computer for an hour and they're working on something Talk to us about, I guess on both sides, your thoughts on hybrid learning.
I think that's another one of the silver linings that comes out of the pandemic, is that we figured out there's not one particular way that you have to do it. It's not a one size fits all. And I think it gets us to equity in education, because if you're sending kids to school the same way every day, just kind of feeding them the same thing, you're going to miss out. There's some kids that need more, some kids that need less. So I think the hybrid model is here to stay. And I think it's really going to help us with really accelerating learning and kind of changing the perception of American students, that, you know, we can really get to them in a different way and help to teach them and keep that ongoing. So
absolutely. Khan, what are your thoughts on hybrid learning?
Yeah, you know, I think there's always been an interesting thought experiment. This was a framework from a high school principal that I first encountered in 2011. And you know, what he had told his faculty is, now that there's all these tools out there, and this was back in 2011, what do you do that the online can't do? And it wasn't a threat. It was actually the other way. It was a liberation. It was saying, look, there's so much that you thought you had to do as a teacher, you know, give the lecture, do that. But is that what you wanted to do? Is that the highest and best use of your time? And the push was really, well, look, if students can get videos at their own time and pace, if they can practice in their zone of proximal development, so to speak, right, you know, so they're maximally learning, then when human beings get into the room together, we should interact. We should have conversation. We could do small group tutoring. We could have peer-to-peer tutoring. We could do simulations. And we've seen that trend. A lot of people, I think that's become more and more mainstream even during the pandemic, that the lecture really should not be what happens when people are in a room together. But then the pandemic hit. And I think the pandemic, more than anything, has made, especially even students, but everyone, appreciate how special it is to be in a room together, or even to be on video conference together live, but especially to be in a room together. So what we're hearing from a lot of educators is, yeah, it would be a shame to go back post-pandemic and then some degree waste that in-person time with just a passive lecture. Students can get that some other time. We should leverage that time to form human connections, teachers to walk around, small group sessions, students to interact with each other, do labs, do Socratic dialogue, whatever it takes, but make it as interactive as possible. And we've seen teachers do this during the pandemic, because they saw when you're just on video conference, you can't lecture to students for 60 minutes. I talked about that research from before. That wasn't really working in the physical classroom either. Teachers have been learning, hey, let me give a little bit of a primer. Let me give them something active to work on every 15, 20 minutes, have them mix it up a little bit. So my hope is this, you know, let's leverage the technology for what technology is good at, the on-demand stuff, not being bound by time or space, being a supplement in many cases, providing some form of tutoring, whether it's real tutoring or kind of a tech version of tutoring. But then when you get into the room together, how do the human beings really form a connection?
When you almost said the word artificial intelligence, which I know is scary for a lot of educators, or has been in the past, technology, AI, there really was this sense that, is that coming to take my job? And hopefully through this pandemic, educators have realized absolutely not. The technology and even AI is here to enhance the learner experience, which is the most important thing, and really enhance the teacher experience, the educator experience, so that they're not stuck grading papers 10, 20 hours a week like they used to, so that they're not, just lecturing to the whole class, when they could really be looking at data and saying, okay, this AI or this technology, maybe it's helped leveling a little bit, level setting people, and now we can spend that one-on-one, that small group time. So in talking about teachers and educators, what more can we do to support? Are they available to get onto Khan Academy through this program? Is it just at the school or the district level? How can we do more to support educators as they've been through the toughest year in history in education, and they need a little bit of a break this summer? Hopefully they get a little bit of a break beyond all the PD they're doing to prep for the fall. And how do we make the kind of recharge their batteries and get them ready for the fall?
Yeah, so for the program that AT&T is putting out, I'm hopeful that, you know, teachers can take a break while students kind of enhance their own learning over the summer and give them a chance, because teachers and parents worked overtime, during the school year. So I'm hopeful that they will have a chance to kind of refresh, renew. By the time they come back in the fall, I'm hoping that they will take advantage of the education portal that AT&T is putting forward, right? And with that, they are definitely a key piece in that overall experience. So there needs to be a learning facilitator involved for a majority of a student's participation. In addition to that, I mean, we have our AT&T Accelerator program totally focused around helping to narrow digital divide, specifically the homework gap. So with that, we have some of our most creative ed tech companies coming up with online solutions around this area, again, to not only help students, but also to help teachers in the work that they're doing. I know that Khan Academy does quite a bit. I'm not sure exactly what they're doing with teachers, but I'm sure, Sal, anything extra that you guys are doing with the learning facilitators?
Yeah, no, I mean, the teachers are the core actors here, because we know, last year we had 12 billion learning minutes on Khan Academy. 6 billion were students and families coming on their own. And even those were probably to a large degree motivated by a classroom or motivated by a teacher. But then the other the other 6 billion learning minutes were teachers directly asking their students to use Khan Academy. And so we know that teachers are essential, the essential motivators, the essential supporters in kids' broader education, not just in terms of their use of Khan Academy. In terms of what we can do to support teachers, I do think, it's your question, Camp Khan, anyone can use it, parents can use it, students can use it on their own, and teachers can get their classrooms on it. But I completely agree with Mylayna. We have to give, this summer has to be an opportunity for a break. And even post-summer, the more that we can take off of teachers' plates, you'd mentioned things like grading papers, or some of the stuff that I don't think any teacher went into the profession to say, I hope I can grade papers all day, or I hope I can play with the IT, or roster kids all day. No one wanted to do that. So the more that we can streamline for teachers, and at the same time unlock the ability to have more human connection, because I also think very few people went into the profession to say, okay, I'm just gonna go through the standards and see what happens. I think every teacher dreams about being able to sit next to students, form a bond, for that student to say, yes, Mr. and Mrs. So-and-so, they unlocked me. They made me believe in myself. They really, they gave me that aha moment that followed with me the rest of my life. And so, when I talk to the team here at Khan Academy and all of our partners and our supporters like AT&T, anything that we can do to simplify, streamline teachers' lives, also at the same time empower students and families, and at the same time have a really good shot of accelerating learning outcomes, I think helps everybody.
Yeah, and can I just jump in
Please.
one quick time? So it's also trying to figure out what teachers need. There are a lot of online opportunities, resources available, but really going to teachers and asking them what they need. So early on in our development process, we went out and we heard from teachers, and they said, we need more around the area of social emotional learning. We need more around the area of literacy. STEM, I think there's a lot out there, but they needed something that was more guided and helped them through the process. So I think it also kind of takes some of the burden off of them to do that work and provide them what it is that they say that they need. So that's what we're working on.
I absolutely agree. And I think that's another silver lining of the pandemic, is giving a voice to students and listening to students, giving a voice to parents, and giving more of a voice to the actual educators. We've kind of worked our way up to the administrators. I don't want to leave them out. What is some advice, and we'll start on either side here, that you would give to administrators as they're rethinking education and paving the way for the next 10 years? What do they need to be thinking about with a lot of more funding than has ever come into our U.S. education system ever before, which is exciting, but it's also a lot of one-time funds, and we want to get it right. What advice would you have for those administrators to not, again, go back to 2019 levels, but to really think about 2021 and the next decade and the best use of these dollars, whether that's infrastructure, programming, that type of thing? Where should they be thinking right now?
Yeah, I think they definitely need to take advantage of all of the resources that are out there. So when I think about a school district, they have all this money coming in. It's like, well, do we buy more laptops? Do we get Wi-Fi? Like, how do we do this? I think it's helpful to kind of work with some of the the folks who are kind of experts in the field who know what the technology is. So so it's working with corporations like AT&T to be able to help to identify, okay, what's out there and what could we take advantage of. But it's also working with a lot of our nonprofit partners. I mean, they have access to the individuals who need the help and can probably give some really good insight. I mean, I know that they have the students, in school, however long, 6 hours or however long in a day. But I think that working with those nonprofit partners is helpful, but then also kind of working with their government officials as well. I think it has to be a community-wide approach to how we handle this issue.
I love that. And that's unfortunately for a lot of communities the first time everyone in the community has had to come together. And even in the education community, the ed tech community, I feel like this pandemic has brought what is already kind of a close-knit industry. Everyone kind of knows everyone, to really listen and to really do whatever it took to support those students and those educators and those administrators, and put themselves, second. And now I think we're coming out of that, and I hope we keep that. But Sal, same question to you.
Yeah, I think, I've had a bunch of conversations with principals, superintendents, and even some state officials. And, I think the ones that I think are being pretty thoughtful about it, there's all of this money flowing in, and it needs to be spent over the next 3 years. So a lot of these folks are running some really interesting, innovative experiments right now. And then they're going to see which of these actually are moving the dial. And then they're also thoughtful that they don't just spend the money and then it disappears and then you're back to where you were once all the money's spent. So it's really a chance to use those resources to run small scale experiments initially and then scale them. I'll give an example. Long Beach Unified in Southern California, they're leveraging schoolhouse.world. They've actually selected students from across the district. So they're not just selecting from one school or one region of the district, from across socioeconomic demographics throughout the district. And they're actually paying these students they're using some of those federal dollars to pay the students to tutor on schoolhouse.world. Now, primarily, they're going to be tutoring their fellow peers, but they might also be tutoring kids from all over the planet. But they think that's also good for these kids. And obviously, their students are going to benefit from other tutors all over the planet. So that's an interesting experiment. They're doing it with 30 or 40 students right now. By the end of the summer, they're going to see, is that the type of high dosage tutoring, to Mylayna's point, that is really moving the dial? If it is, can you scale that up? Can you make that something that's more systemic and meaningful over the next 3 years? I talked to the state superintendent in New Hampshire, and this was, this isn't often where I'm focused on, but it was a big wake-up call. He was really pointing out so many kids are out of the pattern of education, period, that there's just going to be a lot of investment, kind of, that first day of kindergarten, that first day of first grade, where just the resetting of norms, making everyone back into a social emotional place. And, it's hard because these things aren't measured on standardized assessment, but every educator, every parent, and probably every student knows that there needs to be a lot of work on that front too. And then the last piece of advice, and once again, take my advice for what it's worth. I'm really learning more from the administrators than the other way around, is try to focus on those essential things and try to strip away everything else. This goes back to this principle: everyone's overwhelmed, parents are overwhelmed, students are overwhelmed, teachers are overwhelmed, administrators are overwhelmed. And I think our traditional system of you got to cover 180 standards over, or 100 standards over 180 days, and you just have to march through them, it just reinforces that. Instead, say, okay, here's the 50-60% that is essential, and let's just make sure that our kids master it. And it just makes sure everyone has more time and space to breathe and to make sure those foundations are there. Because the reality is, if the foundations are really strong as kids really exit middle school, then they're going to be on track. But if you just keep pushing, and they don't have strong foundations, you get to the reality that we've had pre-pandemic, and it probably got a little bit worse over the last year and a half.
Yeah, and my personal PSA that I share a lot in this show is, especially June, July, August, if you're an administrator out there listening, don't think that just more PD is the answer. Rethink and have better PD, right? More online learning programs aren't always the answer, right? Pick the best ones and really invest into those. I feel like over the last several years, we've gotten inundated with too many options, and none of them have really kind of soaked in. So hopefully we can do that. We've shared some great stories today. I appreciate both of you for that. We always like to end on one last question on this show. And really, it's just to share one final success story, whether that's at the teacher, student, educator, district level, state level, whatever level you could share it. Give us something to kind of take some hope moving into this summer and this fall.
Yeah, so for us at AT&T, I mean, really, you asked me at the beginning what got us on this path of distance learning, and I think back to when we were just kind of trying to formulate kind of how we were going to pivot our work, and we got through that distance learning family connections fund, and we were able to impact about 60 organizations. We reached over 196 million students, and I think that is one of our initial success stories. And so we want to just continue to scale that and to continue to just touch as many students' lives as possible. So the Distance Learning Fund did it for us and really catapulted the work that we're doing now with Digital Divide.
Wow, Sal, that's a tough one to top.
Well, they were part of it, so we can help them. Yes, I appreciate it.
Yeah. Well, I think there's, just like Mylayna mentioned, there's kind of the macro big picture that, as suboptimal as the last year and a half has been, could you imagine if it happened 20 years ago or 30 years ago? It would have been that much worse because there wouldn't have been the tools, the supports, the internet access, the devices, everything. And there was a lot of the learning actually did continue. And we've actually even seen some examples going, to the human scale of, sometimes it's all doom and gloom coming out of the pandemic, but there have actually been cases of certain students that when they were able to learn at their own time and pace in more of a flexible environment, they actually were off to the races. And a lot of these kids were kids from historically under-resourced groups who got multiple grade levels in a year because, once again, they had the opportunity, the incentive to finish their unfinished learning, so to speak. So I'm hopeful. It has been overall suboptimal for most kids, mainly on the social emotional side, and to a large degree on some of the academic learning loss that we talked about. But there were pockets of real success. I think you also have a generation of educators who've been thrown into the deep end of the pool with technology. It's been hard. It's been uncomfortable. They've done heroic efforts, but now I think they're primed, and I think they're ready as everything settles back down to have it settle down in a really, hopefully in a better way than we had pre-pandemic.
We'll leave it on that. That was a great discussion. I appreciate you, Sal, for joining us.
Great to be here.
And also, Mylayna, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
Absolutely. And to my audience, keep an eye out. We're going to be doing some more with AT&T later this month or next month with the Accelerator program. We actually had Max Tuckman from Caribou Learning on not too long ago. So check out that past episode. And Mylayna has been on EdTech Today with MarketScale. Check out that. And Sal was on EdTech Today earlier this year as well, making some predictions that I'll let you go back and watch from January and see if they're coming true now and in the future. Also, check out past episodes. We did a great roundtable with Intel, Panasonic, HP, and Dr. Sunny Magana on some of these similar issues. So be sure to check that out. Thanks again for joining us for this episode, and always, always keep learning.